Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Airfix Provost MK.3. You can see there that the model is all in primer, and it's pretty much where we got to in the last episode. The airframe's been primed with Mr. Surfacer Mr. Primer, I think the 1200 version, and just given a little polish with a very worn sanding sponge. Very complicated scheme this, all with MRP, and it started with a light aircraft grey on the wings. There's going to be a lot of masking, and I did do a lot of thinking about how best to do that, and I just found it easier to just get the grey of the wings on first. Now, as you can see, there's not much contrast there with the primer. It's very difficult to see, and I didn't go in for any paint fading or shading effects. Not appropriate for this paint job. It's very hard wearing paint. Not forgetting the tail areas and paying close attention to the instructions. They're very well drawn, and it is actually a little bit daunting. It's very complicated, all sorts of angles everywhere, and yeah, like I say, took a lot of thought. But there's the light aircraft grey all down. We'll let that dry and we'll mask that off. And you can see there the underside is different to the top side of the tailplanes. Now, everything that was unmasked was painted with this MRP white, partly because I need to get a nice opaque white, and secondly, it's a good base for the red. Now, a lot of people recommend painting red over pink, and I get that. I've not tried it, but this red that I'll be using is a kind of orangey red, and I just felt I'll try doing it over the white and see how that turns out. And actually I was very pleased with how that eventually turned out. Again, white going down, getting that nice and opaque coat, and then it was into the masking, as you can see. So a lot more masking, and yeah, quite complicated, especially around the tail. I was very lucky though, not too many areas that I had to touch up. Inevitably with a scheme like this there is going to be some, but it wasn't too bad actually. I was very pleased with how it turned out. Again, using MRP. This is MRP marking red, the one for Soviet FOD covers, and it replicates the RAF sort of trainer red extremely well actually. It's got that slight orangey sort of tone to it, and works an absolute treat. Just laying it down in very smooth coats, just building up the opacity. MRP is very thin, lacquer it flashes off very quickly. Chances of getting any build up along the paint along the masking edge it's remote. Now, one thing I should have done is I should have masked off where the roundels go, and even though the decals are really good quality, I did get a little bit of sort of bleed through between the red and the white. So in hindsight, I wish I'd done that. Now for the exciting bit, but with a bit of trepidation, is removing all the masking. And you will see that there were some areas that did require some touch-ups, mainly on the underside, around the sort of gear door covers. The inner gear doors are retracted on the ground. It stops FOD getting into the gear bays and doing any sort of damage and filling them up with dirt and stuff like that. So they are closed on the ground, and they are grey, and they do sort of impinge on the red areas. But very satisfying, this, removing all the masking tape, and I was very pleased with how it turned out. As I said, inevitably there's going to be a little bit of touch-up required, mainly around the tail, and I did actually somehow get a little bit of damage on the left tip tank, so it was sanded back and then touched in. Talking of touching in, as was around the gear bay doors, as I mentioned. and just getting rid of some of that red overspray as well. Luckily the MRP is very opaque, so it covers the red with ease. Again, a little bit of damage here, almost like it flaked off. It's a bit weird. I must have dinged it somehow. If you're going to do this, you really need to sort of sand it, sand the area and get it all feathered in before touching up. And then you'll see it was a simple job of just spraying the white again and then blending it all in with the red. I think you'll struggle to see the actual repair there. Doing the anti-glare panel, again, very difficult to mask this actually. Trying to get everything to look exactly symmetrical is really tricky. I'd love it if there was a commercial mask for this bit, and that would be really easy. You just lay it on. You see a little bit of damage on the nose there where I just rested it, so that was a bit of a pain to touch up. Decals were brilliant. They went down a treat. As I said though, a little bit of demarcation you can see through the fuselage roundel, which was a bit of a pain. The whole model was again gloss coated, and then just with a very fine sanding sponge I just gently sanded the decals. This will blend them into the paintwork. I was going to go for a gloss finish over the top, and then this would be vital because you're with a lacquer gloss you're always going to see the decal edge unless you do this. But in hindsight I thought it was a little bit too shiny for 72nd scale, so I eventually varnished the model with a 50-50 mix of gloss and satin. That was from VMS. And that is the end of the sanding job, ready for that sort of satiny gloss varnish. It's looking very neat and tidy, I reckon. Ejection seats, these are the Barracuda seats. They don't fit, they're a little bit too wide and a little bit too tall. As to be expected though, because they're not specifically designed for this particular kit. So just had to sand quite a bit off the bottom and a little bit off the sides just to get them fit. And even then they're still at a slightly wonky angle. Mainly that was the central pedestal that was interfering, but you can see that just beautiful detail from that casting. In with brush paints, various ammo and atom paints, just thin with water, and just with a fine brush just going in and picking out all that detail using references. Did a bit of shading as well, like figure painting techniques, especially on the cushions with the green. And it really is a lot of strappage and very careful painting, but very enjoyable. I don't normally enjoy doing ejection seats, but I really did enjoy these actually. And there are the finished seats, just with a flat varnish, a little bit of the colour photo etch and a wash over the top. Now we just need to put the model together. These are the photo etched bits from the Edward set, just going in, adding that little bit of extra detail. And landing gear just plugs in. You can see a little hole in the bottom of the tyre. That's what I used just to mount them on a cocktail stick. And then once they're in, you're just using a cocktail stick with a little bit of super glue on there and just setting them in at the right angle. I love those little tyres actually, really neat bulge on them, not just a flat spot, a beautiful little detail there. Canopy's gone on, and then I'm just touching in the edge with a little bit of black paint. I did try and fit the Edward photo etch, but it was just too big. And that brings us to the end of the project. Okay, there we are, and here it is. what a beautiful little model this is. Clearly, as you've seen in this series, I've enhanced this model with a little bit of photo etch, some resin for the seats, and the other main one really is the refinement of the panel lines. However, I don't think you need to do it really, if I'm honest. This is one of Airfix's better efforts, and in this new dark grey plastic, everything's a lot sharper, and you could probably quite easily get away with not doing what I did to the panel lines. However, it does make a difference. It's just purely modeller's choice. One little thing that I was really impressed by, and it's such a minor thing, are the little wheels and the bulge on the wheels. They're not just a flat spot, they are actually slightly bulged. You are going to lose some of the depth wear indicators when you clean up the molding stubs. Now, aeroplane tyres don't have the sort of traditional water dispersion tread pattern like a car tyre does. That's not what they're designed for. Those grooves that you see around the wheels are nothing to do with water dispersion. They are there as wear indicators. And actually, most of the aeroplanes I've flown, the tyre is still serviceable even when you can see canvas through them. There's limits, obviously. And quite a lot of the tyres you fly on aeroplanes, certainly aeroplanes like this, are completely smooth, completely worn. So yeah, you can get aquaplaning, but you know, it's fine. But the way they're kind of bulged out, I think is lovely. The panel line work I've done on this, I'm so glad I did it. I nearly didn't, actually. Looking at it on the box, I nearly didn't, and I nearly stayed away from it, but I'm glad I did it. It really does add that extra layer of refinement, and all around the model, all the little photo etch actuators, some of which fell off and had to be replaced, and the aerials and things like that work really well. In the photo etch set, you also get some FOD covers and an exhaust cover. There is no jet pipe on this model, and in theory you can see all the way through. However, I can't. If I just hold that up to the light, now I've got a ring light around the camera, and if I do that and squint, I can just catch the light. It doesn't need a jet pipe. It just doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't. And all right, you get the FOD covers, which is a nice touch, but I decided not to use them. And it's fine. It really is. And that really is all there is to say, apart from the last thing I mentioned is the canopies. So as you saw in the video, I sanded all the frames off, polished them back up. That adds another layer of refinement, I think. If I'm honest, they're probably a little bit narrow, some of the frames, certainly the one on the windscreen. And if I was going to do this again, I'd make sure that's a little bit wider. But actually, it works. And just replacing some of the internal structure with some vinyl, painted vinyl, I think is another good technique. It's the first time I've done that, and I'm going to take that forward. But there we are. She's finished. And absolutely beautiful little thing. So I hope you enjoyed that series. I hope you enjoyed the new format. Let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do some more like this rather than having the separate part one and maybe a separate wash-up video. There we are. Thanks very much. Looking forward to starting the next project, and I'll see you then. Cheers. Bye-bye.